Hello, and welcome to our December product training. We're excited that we have a really full December release, as this is our 12th release of the year, making it extra special for us to wrap up. So we'll cover off on a lot of things today, and we have Mary Pat and Annika along with us to make sure we cover off all of the details of not only what's in the release, but how to participate in focus groups as we move into 2022 and add even more exciting features. So let's jump into the December release. It's jam-packed. As we normally do, we'll break down those features by the core solution, our online payments wallet. We'll deep dive a little bit into new features for our client portal. We'll talk through reporting and integrations. There's some really great features in here and some that have been heavily influenced by all of you in our customer base. Things like timesheet reminders to make sure that your staff members know when those timesheets are due and can get that extra nudge that are needed. A new feature within invoicing that Mary Pat will go through that kind of locks in that approval hierarchy. We have tons of other things that are on here, but I'll hand it over to Mary Pat to deep dive on each one of these. And we hope you are as excited to wrap up this last release of the year with us as we are to present it to you. Mary Pat?
Thanks, Jamie, and thank you all again for joining in our December release training. So the first items we'll go over are around that core solution. The first one we'll talk about are those timesheet reminders. So what this allows administrators to do is to configure various notifications to let your staffers know when their timesheets are due for submission. So there will be 3 new notifications that you can configure. The administrator will choose the time of day when that reminder is sent to the staffers, and that will include whether the time is unsubmitted or no time has been entered at all for that user. Notifications are also based on the staffer's capacity. What I mean by that is based on that capacity is set on that staffer's profile. So if they're set to 160 hours for the month, that means they're a full-time employee. So let's say they only have 30 hours entered on their timesheet. Based on those configurations for those notifications, that staffer would receive that notice letting them know they still have timesheets that their timesheets need to be submitted. In that notification, it'll let them know how many hours that they've entered or submitted versus the total number of hours that are needed for that submission period. That submission period is configured on your timesheet configuration settings. So the first notification type is for the timesheets that are due. So you can see on the right-hand side, you'll be able to select here for that notification type. We'll default that subject line and that message, but you can add additional text in there however you want. So this will send that notification on the day, however you configure how many days before that timesheet period. So in this case, I'm configuring it to send to my staffers a day before that timesheet period ends. And then I can choose that day, that time of day when that notice gets sent. The second one is for timesheets are due today. So this reminder will be sent on the day the timesheets are due, again, based on that timesheet submission period. This will be sent on the last day of that timesheet submission period. Again, choosing the time of day you want that to send to your staffers. And then let's say, for example, that timesheet submission period ends on a Saturday or a Sunday. You can choose to send that notice on the Friday before that Saturday or Sunday. And then the final notification is the timesheets are overdue. So this will send based on the days you configure over here, you can send that notification however many days after the timesheet submission period ends. And then again, setting that day, that time of day you want to send that notice. And then here's an example of that actual notification that will be sent to your staffers. Next is an additional setting we've added to the invoice review and approvals. So if you're utilizing invoice review and approvals, you know that you can set multiple reviewers in whichever order that you want. So with this new setting to enforce the hierarchy of invoice approvals, you can say that you want to actually enforce that hierarchy workflow that you set. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have 3 reviewers in your workflow. This means that, for example, reviewer 3 can't approve an invoice until reviewer 1 and 2 approve that invoice. If this setting is turned off, the review and approval will work as it typically does. And that just means that anybody can approve an invoice at any given point throughout the invoice approval process. With this setting turned on, it needs to follow that hierarchy that you have set. One thing to note is the reviewer will not receive the notification that they have an invoice to approve or review until it's their turn. They will have access to view that invoice, however. They just won't be able to take action on an invoice. So you'll notice that with this setting turned on, using that same example, reviewer 3 would be able to view the invoice, but they wouldn't be able to actually approve it. So those buttons will be disabled for them. As always, the system administrator will always have the option to approve on behalf of any users. They will have to approve for each level in that case. Also, if the invoice is rejected by a reviewer and then gets resent for approval, it'll send back to the person that had initially rejected that invoice. So here you can see on the invoice approval configuration, there's an additional setting here for enforcing that hierarchy workflow. And then here's just a quick snapshot of what that looks like if a approver or a reviewer it's not their turn yet to approve an invoice. Those buttons are disabled. If you hover over that button, you'll see explaining why those buttons are disabled for them. Next is with the project budget. So with the Premier level subscription, you do have the ability to change your projects to budget at a project level. So on each project, you have the budget style here, and you can change that to that project budget style as opposed to the typical task or standard task budgeting style. So all we did here was just add an additional field on that project dashboard where you can enter in that overall budget amount. If you are utilizing this budget style, you'll know that the task tab here actually updates to say budget. And what BigTime does is just create a single task for that project that you can use to enter in fee amounts or the fee budget, and then also monthly fees as well within that allocation editor. So we've just added that field, the fee budget field, onto the project dashboard. So anytime you make a change to the budget amount here, it'll update on the fee budget field for that particular task. Setting the date for vendor bills. So if you're utilizing vendor bills based on the time or creating vendor bills based on the time, you'll be able to configure or set the actual date that gets posted into QuickBooks. So staffers can be configured to convert their hours into a vendor bill as opposed to posting those as a timesheet. So when you do that and then you go in to create those vendor bills on the vendor bill detail screen, or the post detail screen, you'll see there's another field for that date. This is so you can choose exactly what the date is when it gets posted into QuickBooks for that bill. We've added budget data onto the task dashboard. So the task dashboard already included the ability to see the estimate data, so hourly estimates, fee estimates, and expense estimates. So we're adding additional data to that dashboard. So now you can compare your estimates to the hours input. You can compare it to the input fees as well. So calculating that hours times those billing rates, and then also the remaining information. So hours remaining. So taking the hour estimate minus the total hours input, and then the fees remaining. So the fee estimate minus the actual dollars input for that task. So you can see here, we've added those additional columns so you can compare that with what you're actually estimating for each of those tasks. We've enhanced the skills editor screen as well. So in our last release, we released the skills matching feature. So on the skills editor screen for that staffer, we've enhanced how you can view that screen. It allows you to sort the screen however you want. So you could sort by category, by industry, by skill name. So you can do that just by clicking into the column headers like you can on all the other screens within BigTime. We've also added the ability to expand the column widths as well. So if your skill names are a little bit longer and you want to expand the width of that column, you'll have that option. We've also added the ability to filter. So using that filter, that live filter icon, when you click on that, you can filter the screen. So if you want to filter by category or by industry, you'll have that option. And then also the ability to configure what columns are actually displaying on this screen. So maybe you aren't utilizing category or industry for your skills. You can use that gear icon here to just remove those fields from your skills editor. We've added custom fields on the expense entry. So you'll have the option as a system administrator to create custom fields in the expense configuration screen. These custom fields will be added to the expense entry for your staffers to apply those additional fields if you want to. And you'll also have the opportunity to require any of those fields as well. One thing I want to point out is the custom field will not be visible on the expense entry detail screen or within the mobile application, but it will be available within when the user is actually entering their expenses and within the report center. So any of those expense type reports that you're creating within the report center, you'll be able to add those custom fields onto those reports so you can see the actual values that have been entered by your staff. So the custom field configuration will work just as it does on all the other custom fields on a project or tasks, for example. You'll be able to add a new field, choose the custom field type, and then enter in the field label here. Then once you add that custom field, you'll see it within the list of fields on the expense entry, and then you can choose to require it if you want to. You'll only be allowed up to 5 custom fields to start. So as always, we've added a lot of fields on reporting. So constantly updating the report center to allow you to get the most out of your data in BigTime. So this is actually an enhancement to an existing field, which is that invoice type field. So we've, if you add that invoice type field to an invoice type report, you will be able to see the custom calculators if you have custom calculators. So if you're using a T&M with deposit, that's considered a custom calculator within BigTime, or if you're creating your own custom calculators, we'll pull in those values onto this invoice type field. We've also added the default invoice notes on a project list report. So this is also an existing field within BigTime. However, it wasn't available on that project list type report. So what we did was just add that same field to the project list report if you are utilizing default invoice notes on your projects. We've added the invoice post date. So this is again on an invoice list type report. So this will actually represent the actual date that the invoice is posted into your accounting system. This data is also available within the activity feed of an invoice. So we just took that same value and added it to the report center so you can see the date that a staffer actually posted that invoice into your accounting system. This is another field that is also available within the activity feed of a particular invoice. This is the created by. So this allows you to see which staffer within the system actually created that invoice. So again, we just pulled that same data into the report center on those invoice list type reports. And this will say the full name of that staffer who created the invoice. We've added the additional periods to that weekly allocation type report. So recently we added the additional fields to the monthly allocation report so you can see up to 2 years of your allocation data just within one single report. So we've added additional periods to that weekly allocation report so you can see those additional weeks. And this will be for any of these fields that you hear listed below. So allocated, input, hours remaining, and so on. This is another enhancement to an existing field. So in our transaction type reports, we have a field for the date created. So this means a time detail report, expense detail report, or the time and expense type reports. This date created shows the date that that entry was actually created. And what we did is we enhanced that field if you are utilizing the live filter function for that field. So now you can enter in a specific date range. And the reason that this was updated is because that date created field also includes a timestamp, so that live filter function wasn't available for that date range because of that. And then, as I mentioned before, with the addition of the expense custom fields, we've added those fields if you are using them into your expense type reports within the report center, so you can report on those values for each of those expenses. The next two options or enhancements are around BigTime Wallet and the client portal. So if you are integrated or using the client or a BigTime Wallet, the enhancement for this release is the ability to void or refund a payment directly within BigTime. So if you need to void or refund a payment, you'll be able to select that option on your payment when you open up that individual payment within the payment history screen, or if you are looking at a particular invoice, that payment is always available within that activity feed. You'll have the option to void or refund that particular payment. So voiding a payment, the transaction must be initiated within 15 to 20 minutes of your client making that payment prior to it batching. The transaction fee with a voided payment will not take place, so you won't have to worry about any of those transaction fees if the payment happened to be voided. If you need to refund, the difference here is once a payment has been batched, only a refund can be issued. In this case, the transaction fee will need to be accounted for with that refunded payment. A couple things to expect when you click to void or refund a payment. A notification will be sent to your BigTime inbox letting you know the details of that payment and that it's been voided or refunded. Then an email is also automatically sent to the client indicating that the process has been completed. And then once that payment is voided or refunded, it'll move from your pending payment screen into your payment history screen. So here's a quick snapshot of what that will look like. You can see when you open up a particular payment, the void refund button at the bottom right. Again, this is only for those payments that are made through BigTime Wallet. The next enhancement is around the client portal. So if you are giving access to your clients to that client portal where they can view their invoice history and pay those invoices through BigTime Wallet, you can actually configure what invoices are available to your client with this new setting here. So within the portal settings within BigTime for that particular client, you'll have the option to choose whether all the invoices are available or visible, or if you wanted to select visibility. When you choose selected visibility, only the invoices that you select within the billing history tab for that client or project will be visible in the portal. So once you click to save changes, you'll be immediately directed to the billing history tab to select those invoices. So you can see in the portal settings here, I've chosen selected visibility. When I click save, I'm directed to that billing history tab. Billing history tab is accessed by clicking on this ellipses here, and you can choose the billing history. And then you can see that column on the left-hand side where I can select which invoices I want to actually make visible to my client within the client portal. And finally is around BigTime integrations. So the enhancement we did with integration is around HubSpot. So if you are a firm that's integrated with HubSpot, you can choose which deal stage you want to automatically import that deal into BigTime and create that project within BigTime. So we've added another notification of letting the system administrator know when a deal is imported into BigTime and a project is created. That way you're not looking through and trying to compare between HubSpot and BigTime, which projects were newly created. You'll be notified as soon as that project gets imported from HubSpot, and you can see it'll name the actual projects here within that notification of those projects. So that's all we had for today. I'm going to turn it over to Annika to talk about what's next.
Thanks, Mary Pat. We are excited about what we were able to release this month and this year, and we're looking forward to what's to come. So be sure to check with us in the new year for our next What's New webinar. And in the meantime, please feel free to contact us with any feedback, questions, or concerns, or if you want to be a part of the focus group at product@bigtime.net. And we're done with our In the Know educational series for December, but we'll be starting it up again in probably February. So be sure to visit us at get.bigtime.net/education in the coming months so you can continue to sign up for whichever topics are most relevant for you. Thanks.